The call came at 3:47 p.m. on a Saturday, just as I was leaving the university campus after giving a guest lecture on trauma and memory processing. I saw the school's name flash across my screen and my stomach turned before I even picked up. It was the school nurse, her voice tight and urgent, telling me that my 12-year-old daughter Sienna had been found locked in a freezer during a private event. She had been discovered by a janitor, trembling violently, her lips blue, her skin mottled with the first signs of frostbite. The nurse said paramedics were already on site. The words didn't make sense at first, but when she said the words, Trevor's wedding reception, I stopped breathing for a moment. Trevor, my brother-in-law, my sister Naomi's husband, the man I had never trusted, the man who always smiled too long, touched people too deliberately, and praised children just a little too closely. The nurse said Sienna was conscious but not speaking, her body locked in a trauma response. I got in my car and drove like a storm, running every red light between downtown and the event center. When I arrived, the wedding was still in full swing. Music was playing, laughter echoed through the walls. Guests were sipping champagne while my daughter lay wrapped in a silver thermal blanket, her face pale and eyes wide as if still frozen in fear. I pushed past the chaos, found her curled against a paramedic. Her teeth were chattering uncontrollably. When I tried to hold her, she flinched. That was the moment I knew something had broken. Not just inside her, but in me too. They locked my child in a freezer. And now, I was going to lock away every lie they'd ever told. My name is Dr. Adriana Ramirez, but most people call me Addie. I am 35 years old, a forensic psychologist and professor at a university in Austin, Texas. I have spent the last decade teaching graduate students how to identify signs of coercion, how trauma rewires the brain, and how abusers often wear the cleanest suits. But none of my training prepared me for what happened to my daughter. I've always been calm under pressure, measured in conflict, the one who mediates before explosions. My appearance reflects that energy, too. Long black hair I keep pinned back, dark almond eyes that rarely show emotion unless I choose to. I'm the woman who always shows up early, speaks softly, and remembers to write thank you notes. I believed for most of my life that reason could fix anything. That belief ended the day Sienna was dragged into a freezer by someone I'd shared holiday dinners with. Sienna is the only child I had with my late husband, Daniel, who passed away from a brain aneurysm when she was just a baby. Since then, it's been the two of us, steady and inseparable. She is clever, sensitive, always watching the world with wide amber eyes and asking questions no adult wants to answer. She reads everything. She volunteers at animal shelters. She has always been the kind of kid adults call old soul. My younger sister Naomi is 32 and everything I'm not: fashionable, impulsive, bubbly. She married Trevor Sinclair 4 years ago. He is a corporate attorney who thrives on control. Tall, meticulously dressed, with a smile that never quite reaches his eyes. From the beginning, I felt something inauthentic in him. He was always too aware of how people saw him, too practiced in the role of charming professional. To the rest of the family, he was golden. A man who took care of things. He paid for dinners, hosted barbecues, organized photo shoots. He also commented on Sienna's body when he thought no one heard. Discouraged her from speaking in front of adults, and once called her a precocious little drama queen. Naomi told me I was overreacting. But I wasn't. I knew it then. And I was right. It had been Trevor's idea to throw a lavish 50th anniversary party for his parents at the Bellwether Estate, one of the most exclusive private venues in Houston. He invited over 200 guests, rented a jazz trio, and hired a Michelin-trained caterer. Everyone from Naomi's side of the family flew in, dressed in pastel linens and fake smiles. Sienna and I were staying for the weekend. I didn't want to go, my instincts warned me. But Naomi insisted that it would mean a lot if I showed support. She promised that Trevor had changed, that he respected boundaries now. I ignored the quiet protest in my chest and agreed. The first half of the event was uneventful. Trevor delivered a speech, toasting his parents with flowery praise and the kind of public humility that always hides private arrogance. Naomi glowed beside him. Sienna sat at the designated kids' table, tucked between second cousins, fidgeting with her bracelet but smiling when she caught my eye. Around 7 o'clock, I stepped outside to take a phone call from a student who was in crisis. I was gone for 11 minutes. 11. When I came back inside, everything looked the same. The music played, glasses clinked, people laughed. But Sienna was not at the table. I scanned the crowd, asked a cousin. No one had seen her. I moved faster, heart pounding now. It wasn't like her to wander. I checked the restrooms, the patio, even the coat closet. Still nothing. Then one of the young waiters, barely 20, came running from the back hallway, shouting that someone needed help in the kitchen. That's where they found her. A janitor had opened the walk-in freezer to retrieve supplies and saw her curled in the corner, shivering violently, barely able to speak. Someone had locked her in from the outside. The latch was heavy, not something a child could operate accidentally. The staff called 911. Guests started whispering. Naomi found me in the hallway as I was rushing back from the kitchen. Her face was pale, eyes glassy. She grabbed my wrist and said, "I think it was Trevor." I stopped breathing. Naomi explained in fragments. Sienna had seen Trevor in a back corridor with one of the servers, a young woman named Alina. She was crying, trying to pull away from him while he cornered her against the wall. Sienna didn't scream or panic. She quietly told Naomi what she'd seen. Naomi said she had just started walking toward the corridor to check when Trevor overheard them. He stormed over, accused Sienna of lying. He said she was attention-seeking, ruining the party, making up stories because she hated men. Naomi tried to intervene, but Trevor shoved past her, grabbed Sienna's arm, and pulled her down the hallway. Naomi said she followed, but her own uncle stopped her and said, "Let the man deal with it." In those few minutes, Trevor hauled my daughter to the industrial kitchen, shoved her into the walk-in freezer, and latched the door shut. Sienna screamed, banged on the metal. No one came. The music was too loud, the hallway too far. Naomi said it took her almost 2 minutes to convince a cousin to help break open the latch. She didn't have her phone. Her father had taken it from her, told her to sit down and not cause a scene. When I reached Sienna, the paramedics were already wrapping her in a foil blanket. Her lips were cracked, her fingers purple. She couldn't even cry properly. Trevor tried to defend himself. Claimed it was a misunderstanding. Said Sienna had been having a tantrum and ran into the freezer. But I looked at her arm. Purple bruises in the shape of fingers. And that's when I knew. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was violence disguised as discipline, rage masked as control. And I was going to expose every last lie he had ever hidden behind a bowtie and a smirk. The next morning, I took Sienna to our pediatrician, who documented her injuries, the bruises, the borderline hypothermia, the stress response that left her unable to sleep. Sienna barely spoke. When she did, it was in whispers. She kept asking if she had done something wrong. I held her and promised her the truth. She had done the bravest thing imaginable. She told the truth when no one else dared to. Trevor went quiet. No apologies. No public statement. Instead, his legal background kicked in. I received a polite but aggressive letter from his law firm within 48 hours stating that any public defamation of his character would result in legal action. They said Sienna's allegations were deeply troubling and likely the result of psychological instability. They hinted at possible intervention from CPS if I persisted. He was trying to turn the system on me. So I did what I do best. I investigated. First, I met with the estate's kitchen manager, a woman named Marcia, who confirmed that the freezer latch required deliberate engagement from the outside to lock. She said she had seen a tall man in a navy tuxedo leaving the kitchen area just before the screams. That matched Trevor's outfit. Then, I tracked down Alina, the server Sienna had seen. She was hesitant at first, scared to talk. But after I reassured her that we were building a case and not exposing her to risk, she told me everything. Trevor had groped her. It wasn't the first time. He had cornered her in the hallway. Assumed she wouldn't fight back. When she resisted, he told her she'd never work again in high-end venues. That he had friends in every hotel in Houston. I recorded her statement with her consent. Meanwhile, Sienna started having night terrors. She would wake up gasping, sweating, convinced she was trapped again. I installed extra locks. I left all the lights on. I took time off work to stay home with her. That's when the school called. The counselor told me that they'd received an anonymous tip suggesting that Sienna had a vivid imagination and was making dangerous false claims due to paranoia instilled by a hostile parent. They asked if we were open to psychiatric evaluations. I asked for the IP address of the email. They refused, but I had a tech-savvy friend run a private trace from a screenshot. It was sent from the same network that belonged to Trevor's office. I wasn't surprised. Then came the Instagram account. Someone had created a near duplicate of Sienna's profile. The posts were disturbing. Photos of knives, captions about death, references to being in the dark. Her classmates started asking questions. Some believed it, some didn't. The psychological damage was worse than any physical wound. My daughter began withdrawing from everything she once loved. So I gathered evidence. I stored screenshots, recorded conversations, made backups of everything. I requested camera footage from the venue. They only had partial angles, but one blurry hallway feed showed Trevor pulling Sienna by the wrist toward the back kitchen. I printed every document, labeled every folder. That's when I remembered something critical. Trevor had helped Naomi set up their home security system 2 years ago, and had used his own cloud storage login. Naomi didn't know this. She was finally starting to question things, especially after discovering 2 large withdrawals from their joint account marked as consulting reimbursements. We checked her old laptop, and there it was, a synced folder tied to Trevor's cloud. Inside were hundreds of video files. Some were ordinary, family holidays, dinners, vacations. But then there were the others. Clips of Sienna at birthday parties, church events, even swim practice. Always filmed from a distance. Always focused just on her. My skin crawled. These were not memories. These were obsessions. One file stood out, labeled only with a date, the night of the anniversary party. The first minute was just rustling audio from what sounded like Trevor's jacket pocket. But then you could hear Sienna's voice, trembling as she told Naomi what she saw. Then Trevor's voice, low and furious. Then the screams, the slamming freezer door, and the final line, captured clearly. "You'll learn to shut that little mouth, girl. This is what happens when you make things up." It was all there. I knew now what I had to do. By the end of that week, my binder of evidence was thick enough to rival any case file I'd handled professionally. But I wasn't taking it to court just yet. I knew Trevor. I knew how he operated. He wouldn't go down unless cornered. That's when I got in touch with someone I hadn't spoken to in over a decade, Janelle Carter. Trevor's ex-girlfriend before Naomi. She lived in Nevada now, worked as a school counselor. I still had her email from an old Christmas card Naomi once sent me. I wasn't sure she'd respond. But when I explained who I was and what happened to Sienna, she called within hours. "I've been waiting for someone to say those words," she said. Janelle told me that Trevor had once locked her nephew, a 7-year-old boy, in the trunk of a car for misbehaving during a barbecue. He left the boy in there for nearly 20 minutes while everyone else ate. When the boy was let out, shaking and crying, Trevor said, "Now he knows how to respect grown-ups." I recorded Janelle's statement and asked if she would testify if necessary. She didn't even hesitate. Gladly. Armed with this, I took the video evidence, financial withdrawals, screenshots of the fake Instagram, and the audio from the freezer incident to my lawyer, a woman named Meredith Young who specialized in domestic abuse and white-collar crime. When she finished reviewing the materials, she looked up and said, "You don't just have enough to win. You have enough to bury him." We prepared to file charges: child endangerment, false imprisonment, digital harassment, and a civil claim for psychological damages. But Trevor struck first. 2 days later, a process server arrived with papers. Trevor was suing me for defamation and emotional distress. The amount listed was $50,000. He had included Sienna as a named party in the suit, claiming she fabricated the freezer incident to sabotage family relationships. My hands shook as I read through the documents. This man, who had physically assaulted my child, terrorized her with fake social media accounts, and stolen money from his in-laws, was now trying to bleed us out through legal fees. But I wasn't afraid. Because then came the twist he didn't see coming. Meredith filed a motion of counteraction alongside a restraining order. But more than that, we leaked the audio clip. Not to the media, not yet. But to the extended family. Naomi's cousins, Trevor's law firm colleagues, even the priest who had blessed their wedding. The reaction was instant. Naomi's phone exploded with calls. Half the family was in denial. The other half went silent. But the silence said everything. That night, Naomi found a set of forged checks in Trevor's office drawer. Her mother's name, her mother's signature, except the loops were wrong. The ink too new. Trevor had been siphoning money from her mother's savings account to fund something labeled only as strategic consulting. The truth was in plain sight now. Trevor was not just abusive. He was drowning in debt. Meredith hired a private investigator who traced gambling debts across 3 states. Poker clubs, underground tables, offshore wire transfers. That's where the money went. That's what he was protecting. Meanwhile, the school counselor, Mrs. Kendrick, called me back. She had reviewed the IP addresses for the anonymous reports and confirmed they came from a law office registered to Trevor's firm. She apologized for doubting Sienna. Said she'd document everything for any CPS review. The dominoes were falling. Then came the night Naomi found the cloud backup. Trevor, ever the egotist, had stored years of video surveillance of Sienna, disguised as family memories. My breath caught as I watched clip after clip of him filming her from across rooms, zooming in when she bent to tie her shoes, leaning behind door frames. It wasn't pornographic, not technically. But it was something else. Obsession, possession, control. And then, in one particular video from her 10th birthday, you could hear him mutter under his breath, "She talks too much." That night, Naomi left him. She packed a bag, took her laptop, and drove to my house. Trevor showed up 3 hours later. He didn't knock, he pounded. I didn't answer. We called the police. He was still outside when they arrived. He claimed he just wanted to talk to his wife. The officers asked him to leave. He complied, but not before turning to the window and mouthing the words, "This isn't over." But he was wrong, because the very next morning, we filed everything with the district attorney. The video, the audio, the financial records, the interview transcripts. Meredith walked into the DA's office with a binder, a flash drive, and the calm of a woman who knows her client is bulletproof. They opened an investigation immediately. By the time the investigation officially launched, Trevor had lost control of the narrative. His colleagues at the firm began to distance themselves, worried the mounting evidence might implicate the company. He was placed on indefinite leave under the pretense of personal family matters. But behind the scenes, the Bar Association began reviewing his license. Still, he refused to go quietly. 3 days after Naomi filed for divorce and full spousal protection, I received an alert on our home security app. The front door camera caught Trevor driving past our street 3 separate times that night. He didn't get out, didn't say anything. But the message was clear. He wanted us to know he was watching. We forwarded the footage to the DA and added it to the restraining order request. That weekend, Meredith secured a court date for a preliminary hearing. But before we even reached that point, Trevor violated the temporary restraining order by showing up at Sienna's school unannounced. He parked outside the soccer field and stood beyond the gate, arms crossed, eyes locked on her as she warmed up. Another parent recognized him from the news and approached him, asking him to leave. Trevor shoved the man. Within minutes, 2 more fathers stepped in, surrounding him without touching him, making it clear he was unwelcome. Trevor backed away, but not before yelling across the field, "You're poisoning her mind. She'll see the truth one day." Sienna saw him. She froze mid-step, but she didn't cry. She walked off the field, straight to me, and said in a steady voice, "He doesn't get to scare me anymore." That night, the police picked him up for violating the restraining order. This time, the judge didn't grant bail. He was declared a potential flight risk and a danger to a minor. Over the next 2 months, the prosecution built their case. Janelle submitted her sworn testimony, as did Alina, the server from the wedding. Naomi handed over Trevor's financial records, complete with forged checks and unexplained withdrawals. And then came the final blow. A whistleblower from Trevor's firm leaked documents showing Trevor had laundered payments through false legal consultations with elderly clients. One of those clients was Naomi's mother. Another was a retired war veteran suffering from early-stage dementia. The charges expanded from child endangerment to elder fraud, falsification of legal documents, and harassment. The trial date was set. We didn't flinch. The courtroom was full on the first day of trial. Trevor sat at the defense table in a suit that no longer fit him right, the crisp image he'd clung to for years finally crumbling under the weight of exposed truth. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at Naomi. But he couldn't stop glancing at Sienna, who sat beside me in a soft blue dress, her hands folded, her back straight. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She stared straight ahead, calm and unshaken. 15 witnesses testified. Alina, the server, detailed what he'd done to her in that hallway. Janelle told the story of her nephew in the car trunk. Naomi's mother took the stand and described the financial betrayals she'd just discovered. A digital forensic expert walked the jury through the timeline of fake accounts and IP traces. Meredith played the audio from the freezer. The room went dead silent when Trevor's voice filled the speakers. "You'll learn to shut that little mouth." The jury needed only 3 hours to deliver a verdict. Guilty. Guilty on all counts. Child endangerment, false imprisonment, elder abuse, wire fraud, harassment. The judge sentenced him to 10 years in state prison. No parole for the first 6. His license was revoked. His firm disavowed him. His assets were frozen. His reputation, once guarded like a castle, now lay in ruins. After the sentencing, Sienna asked if it was finally over. I told her the truth. It's over for him. For us, it's healing time. Naomi and her mother moved into a quiet apartment near us. They attend every one of Sienna's school events now. My daughter goes to therapy twice a week, where she paints, writes, and talks to someone who listens without judgment. She's playing piano again. She sleeps through the night. I still check the doors. I still walk her to school. I still carry a quiet rage, not just at Trevor, but at everyone who saw signs and looked away. But more than that, I carry pride. Pride in the little girl who told the truth. Pride in the silence I broke. Pride in the ice I shattered, even when it was built around someone I once called family. Some people will always say family should stay united. But unity without integrity is just enabling. Protecting a name is not worth more than protecting a child. Trevor tried to freeze us out. Instead, we froze his legacy where it belonged, buried under the weight of every truth he thought he could silence. Sienna is growing up brave. She knows now that even in the coldest, darkest moments, her voice carries warmth. And it can melt everything.